Quinn Hartley had signed the papers for a multi-million-dollar merger that morning. But by late afternoon, he was standing in the middle of a sun-drenched Napa Valley vineyard, wondering why in the world he'd agreed to this winery tour. "This is ridiculous," he muttered under his breath, adjusting the sleeves of his tailored navy shirt. The sunlight bounced off the gold face of his watch, reminding him he had better things to do like fly back to Manhattan and close another deal. But his business partner had insisted. "You've been on edge for months, man. Go drink some wine and calm down." So here he was. Surrounded by couples in linen and straw hats, Quinn stuck out like a sore thumb. He didn't do slow, he didn't do wine tastings. And he definitely didn't expect the woman pouring samples at the next table to stop him in his tracks. "Cabernet." The voice was soft but confident. He turned. She was standing behind a barrel turned into a makeshift counter, holding a bottle in one hand and a wine glass in the other. Her name tag read Piper Novak. Her brown hair was twisted up in a messy bun, a few loose strands brushing her cheek. She wore a simple white blouse tied at the waist and jeans that clung to long legs. Her smile didn't feel rehearsed like the others he'd passed. It was warm. Real. Quinn blinked. "Sure." Piper poured the deep red wine with practiced ease, then pushed the glass toward him. "Blackberry tobacco leather, let it sit a second." He took the glass, swirled it, and gave it a sniff. "Smells like wine." She gave a soft laugh. "You're not here for the tasting, are you?" "I'm here because someone dragged me." "Figures." She tilted her head, studying him. "You're wearing a watch that probably costs more than my car and you keep checking it like you're waiting for a helicopter to land." Quinn couldn't help it, he laughed. "A real one, not the polite, guarded kind he usually gave at boardroom tables. You always this blunt." "Only when I'm right." He took a sip. The wine was surprisingly good, but that wasn't what had his attention. It was her sharp, witty, and clearly unimpressed by him. Everyone in his world either feared him or wanted something, but she looked at him like he was just another guy in line for a sample. "Is this your place?" he asked, sort of. "My dad started it. He passed a few years ago. Now it's mine and my brother's. We run the tours, pour the wine, fix the tractor, whatever needs doing." Quinn nodded slowly. "That explains the oil on your arm." Piper wiped her forearm with a napkin and shrugged. "Gearbox jammed this morning." He stared at her, then down the rest of the wine. "You have more of that." Her smile widened. "You're not leaving, are you?" "Not yet." By the time the sun began dipping behind the hills, Quinn had followed Piper through the vineyard, past rows of grapevines, and into a rustic barn where oak barrels lined the walls. "You're still here," she said, glancing at him as she wiped her hands on a towel. "I didn't expect to be." She handed him a glass of chilled rosé. "You don't strike me as a pink wine guy." "I'm not, but I'm curious." "About the wine," she teased. "About you." Piper let out a soft laugh, then leaned against one of the barrels. "You're not from here?" "No, let me guess. New York." "Manhattan." She raised a brow. "Wall Street, private equity, sounds exhausting." "It is." He took a sip. "But it pays well." She gave him a look. "And does that make you happy?" The question caught him off guard. He always had answers, always had control. But standing here in a dusty barn with a woman who didn't even blink at his status, he suddenly didn't know. "I don't know," he said quietly. Piper studied him for a long moment, then stepped closer. "You don't talk like a man who doesn't know what he wants." Quinn looked at her, really looked. The curve of her jaw, the steady confidence in her eyes, the way she didn't flinch under his gaze. "I know what I want right now," he said. "And what's that?" "You." Piper blinked, surprised, then she laughed, shaking her head. "You're unbelievable." He stepped forward, closing the space between them. "I'm serious. Quinn, you don't even know my last name." "I don't care," she said, folding her arms. "And you don't know anything about me except that I pour wine and fix tractors." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a sleek black card, and handed it to her. "Quinn Hartley." She took the card, eyes widening slightly as she read the embossed gold lettering. "Hartley Capital, you've heard of it." "Yeah," she said, her voice quiet. "You're that Hartley?" "I am." She looked up at him. "Why didn't you say anything? Would it have changed anything?" "I don't know," she said honestly. Maybe. They stood in silence for a moment. Then she handed the card back. "Keep it, I don't need it." He stared at her. "What do you need?" he asked. Piper tilted her head. "Something real." That night, Quinn didn't return to his hotel. Instead, he helped Piper close the barn, lock up the tasting room, and carry crates to the cellar. She made them both grilled cheese sandwiches in the tiny kitchen behind the gift shop. They sat outside on a bench beneath the stars, sipping leftover wine and talking about everything her childhood summers in the vineyard, his cutthroat world of finance, the way they both felt like strangers in their own lives sometimes. When she laughed, he leaned in. When she looked at him, his heart did something unfamiliar, something terrifying. And when she fell asleep with her head on his shoulder, he didn't move for a long time. Because for the first time in years, Quinn Hartley didn't want to be anywhere else. Quinn returned to the vineyard the next morning before the gates even opened. He didn't plan it, didn't think it through. He'd woken in his hotel room with the taste of last night's wine still lingering on his tongue and Piper Novak's head still resting against his shoulder in his memory. He had back-to-back meetings scheduled in San Francisco, a jet on standby, and a full report to deliver to investors by the end of the week. And yet, none of it felt urgent anymore. The gravel crunched under his shoes as he stepped out of the car. A low mist still clung to the rows of vines under the early sun, and the scent of damp earth and ripening fruit filled the air. She was standing near the barn, her back to him, stacking empty crates onto a pallet. Her jeans were tucked into boots now, and her hair was tied up with a pencil shoved through it like an afterthought. "You're early," she said without turning around. "I didn't want to wait," Quinn replied. Piper glanced over her shoulder, surprised but not startled. "I thought you'd be halfway to a skyscraper by now." "I was supposed to be." He walked over, leaned down, and picked up a crate to help. "But I had a better offer." She eyed him. "Helping me load fruit bins isn't exactly a lucrative opportunity." "I'm not here for the money." Piper's brow lifted slightly, but she didn't argue. Together they loaded crates in silence, the kind that wasn't awkward or forced, just steady, like the rhythm of work that didn't need filling with words. When they finished, she wiped her hands on a towel and motioned toward a small shed near the edge of the vines. "Want to see something?" He followed her to the shed. Inside, it was cooler, darker. A small table stood in the center, covered in papers, notebooks, and old photographs. On the wall hung a large corkboard filled with pinned notes, harvest schedules, and a faded map of the property. "This was my dad's," she said, brushing dust from the edge of the table. "He kept track of everything by hand, weather patterns, soil readings, even which vines seemed happier." "Vines can be happy," Quinn asked. "They can be stubborn. And sometimes they don't like to be moved." She picked up one of the notebooks and flipped it open, revealing neat, looping handwriting. "He swore they had moods, said if you paid attention, the grapes would tell you what kind of wine they wanted to be." Quinn leaned closer to the book. There were notes in the margins, little comments, observations about sunlight, water levels, even the behavior of birds that nested in the nearby trees. "He sounds like he loved this place." "He did," she said softly, "and it almost died with him." She closed the notebook and looked up at him. "We were drowning in debt when he passed. The bank was ready to take the land. My brother wanted to sell. I couldn't do it. What changed? I took a risk. Started renovating the tasting room, pitched to local restaurants, offered to host weddings. It was slow, but people started coming back." She laughed a little. "And then one day a wine blog called our Cabernet surprisingly soulful for a small town operation. After that, the bookings tripled." Quinn stepped back, absorbing it all. "You saved it." "No," she corrected. "I'm still saving it. One storm, one bad harvest, and we're right back to square one, but I'm not giving up." He nodded slowly. "You don't strike me as someone who ever does." Something about the way he said it made her pause. "You're different," she said. He tilted his head. "From what?" "From what I expected. When I saw you yesterday, I figured you were just another guy in expensive shoes looking to kill an hour. And now I think you're trying to remember what it's like to breathe." Quinn looked at her, and for a moment he couldn't find anything to say. Because she wasn't wrong, Piper had a way of seeing straight through the layers he'd spent years building. "I haven't felt like this in a long time," he said finally. She didn't look away. "Then stay," he blinked. "Piper, not forever, just today, stay for harvest prep. Help us crush the grapes, you'll hate it. It's sticky and loud and smells like fermented chaos," he laughed. "You make it sound charming. It's not, but it's real." He pulled out his phone, glanced at the screen, then turned it off and slid it back into his pocket. "Then I'm in." Hours passed in a blur of hushed instructions, clattering equipment, and the scent of overripe fruit. Quinn rolled up his sleeves and joined the crew locals in worn flannel shirts and sunburned forearms hauling baskets and feeding grapes into the crusher, his hands stained purple by the end of it. When the sun reached its peak, Piper handed him a bottle of water and gestured toward a shaded bench near the barn. He collapsed onto it, his dress shirt untucked, his hair tousled, sweat dampening his collar. "You survived," she teased. "I think I got grape juice in my eye. That's tradition." He leaned back and took a long drink. "You weren't kidding, it's a mess." "But it's ours," she said, sitting beside him. He watched her for a long moment. "Do you ever regret staying? Every time I'm chasing invoices or begging the weather to hold off one more day." She smiled faintly. "But then I walk through the vines in the morning and I remember why I'm here." Quinn's gaze lingered on her profile. "What if you didn't have to fight so hard?" She turned to him. "What do you mean? What if you had help, investment, a partner who believed in what this could become?" Her expression shifted, guarded now. "Is that why you came back, to make an offer?" "No," he said quickly. "That's not why I came, but I can't pretend I don't see the potential here." Piper stood, brushing her hands on her thighs. "I've had offers before. I'm not them." "No, you're not." She looked at him, eyes narrowing slightly. "But that doesn't mean I'm for sale. I'm not trying to buy you, Piper." "Good," she said, walking a few steps away. "Because I don't want to wonder if you're here for the grapes or for me." He stood, closing the distance between them. "I'm here because I can't stop thinking about you. And that terrifies me more than any boardroom." She looked up at him, her voice quieter now. "Then don't make this about business. Don't make me a proposal wrapped in dollar signs." "I won't," he said. "But I'm not walking away either." They stood in silence, the breeze rustling the vines behind them. Finally, she said, "Then stay tonight. There's a harvest dinner, just family and crew, no investors, no portfolios. Just food, firelight, and bad singing." He smiled, the tension in his shoulders easing. "I'll bring the wine." "You better," she replied, turning back toward the barn. "And we're something you don't mind getting smoke on." As the sun tilted west and the vineyard glowed gold, Quinn Hartley followed her, no longer the man who'd arrived in pressed slacks and polished shoes. He was someone else now, someone who'd rolled up his sleeves, crushed grapes with his hands, and said yes to a world that had nothing to do with profit margins. And for the first time since he could remember, he didn't check his phone once. The fire crackled as twilight settled over the vineyard, casting amber light across the long wooden table set beneath strings of swaying bulbs. Mismatched chairs circled it, some with cushions, others bare, and platters of roasted vegetables, herbed chicken, and crusty bread filled the center. A battered record player near the barn played low jazz, the kind that made everything feel softer. Quinn sat at the far end of the table beside Piper, his sleeves rolled to his elbows, wine glass half full. He hadn't touched his phone in hours. Not because he'd forgotten it, but because he didn't want to break whatever fragile, golden thing had settled around them. The dinner was loud and unruly, but in the best way, laughter overlapping, forks scraping, someone at the other end telling a story about accidentally bottling a wasp in a vintage batch. Across from him, Piper's older brother, Liam, was eyeing him with the kind of suspicion reserved for tax collectors and coyotes. He nursed a beer and leaned back in his chair, arms folded. "So, Quinn," Liam began, his voice rough with country grit. You planning to harvest grapes every day, or is this some kind of billionaire sabbatical? Piper sighed. Liam, it's a fair question, Quinn said, meeting his gaze, and I'm not a billionaire. Could have fooled me, Liam muttered. That car you pulled up in. I've seen smaller houses. Quinn didn't flinch. I'm here because I want to be, not for a headline or a photo op, and not to buy anything. Liam gave a skeptical grunt. People like you don't just show up in places like this without an angle. Maybe I'm tired of angles. Piper placed a hand on the table, firm but calm. He's been helping all day. Give him a break. Liam's eyes didn't leave Quinn's, but he leaned back, letting the subject drop for now. As dessert made its way out, a warm berry cobbler in cast iron dishes, Quinn leaned toward Piper. Your brother doesn't like me. He doesn't like most people, she said, scooping cobbler onto plates, but he's protective. Especially since Dad passed. He thinks I'm going to hurt you. She glanced at him, then offered a faint, thoughtful smile. Are you? No, Quinn said softly, but I might end up hurting myself. Piper blinked, surprised by the honesty, then she passed him a plate without a word. After dinner, the group drifted toward the fire pit, where guitars were passed around and someone began singing off-key. Piper stayed behind, collecting plates and stacking them carefully. Quinn joined her, grabbing a tray. You don't have to do this alone. I usually do. I'm not most people. She looked at him then, a searching look that held more weight than flirtation or curiosity. No, you're not. He followed her back into the tasting room, now dim and quiet, the scent of wood smoke trailing in after them. As she rinsed dishes at the sink, he leaned against the counter, watching her. Do you ever think about leaving? He asked. She didn't look up. Every winter, when the rain floods the lower vines and the heater breaks down in the cottage. I think about how much easier it would be to start fresh somewhere else. Then spring comes, and I remember why I stayed. What would it take to make you go? She turned off the tap, dried her hands with a towel, and leaned beside him. Something bigger than the vineyard. Something worth letting go of everything I've built. Quinn's chest tightened. And if you found it, I'd want to be sure it wasn't going to disappear the second I reached for it. They stared at each other, the air between them charged with something deeper than attraction. Something unspoken and too new to name. I wasn't supposed to stay this long, he said. I know. I've missed 3 meetings and my assistant is probably threatening legal action. She crossed her arms, one eyebrow raised. Are you asking for permission to leave? I'm asking if you'd care if I did. Piper hesitated. I would, Quinn exhaled slowly. Then I'm not going anywhere. That night he didn't sleep in his hotel. He stayed in the guest room above the old carriage house, the one she unlocked with an iron key and handed to him without a word. The bed was small, the mattress firm, but he slept deeper than he had in years. When he woke at dawn, the sky was still pale and the vineyard outside his window shimmered with dew. He dressed quickly and found Piper already outside, boots on, clipboard in hand, walking the rows. He fell into step beside her without asking. Checking the canopies? He asked. Monitoring leaf growth, too much shade and the grapes won't ripen evenly. She glanced over. You're up early. I couldn't sleep. She gave him a sideways look. I thought you said you slept like a rock. I said I slept deeper than usual. I didn't say I stopped thinking. They walked for a while in silence, the only sound the crunch of gravel and the soft rustle of vines in the breeze. I have to fly back tonight, he said eventually, her steps slowed. I figured, but I'm coming back. She looked at him carefully. Quinn, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded envelope. I had this drawn up yesterday. It's not a buyout. It's not a takeover. It's a partnership proposal, minority stake, silent unless you want otherwise. I'm not trying to change anything. I just want to help. She stared at it. You said this wasn't about business. It's not. But pretending I can't use what I have to make your life easier, that's not honest either. Piper didn't take the envelope, not yet. Why are you doing this? Because you don't ask for help. Because you've been carrying this place on your back for years, and because I've never wanted to be part of something as badly as I want to be part of this with you. Her throat moved as she swallowed. And when the shine wears off. When the vineyard isn't new and charming anymore, it's not the vineyard I'm staying for, he said quietly. She looked at the envelope again, then tucked it into her back pocket without opening it. I'll read it, but I'm not making promises. I'm not asking for any, he said. Not yet. They walked again, side by side, until the sun began to rise in full, bathing the valley in gold. When Piper stopped near a row of early harvest vines, she turned to him. You know what terrifies me more than losing this place? He shook his head, letting someone in. And finding out I was wrong. You're not wrong, he said. She nodded once as if she wanted to believe him. At sunset, Quinn stood near the gravel driveway, suitcase in hand. Piper watched from the porch, arms wrapped around herself. He walked to her, slow and deliberate. I'll be back in 3 days, she raised an eyebrow. That's very specific. I have a meeting in Chicago, then I'm yours for as long as you'll have me. She didn't respond right away, then finally she stepped forward and kissed him. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't tentative. It was the kind of kiss that silenced every doubt, every unspoken fear. When she pulled back, her voice was low. Don't be late. He smiled, touched her cheek, and walked to the car. She watched until the taillights vanished down the winding road. Then she reached into her pocket and unfolded the envelope. Her eyes scanned the terms, her lips parted in disbelief, then softened. It wasn't just generous. It was thoughtful, respectful. A gesture, not a deal. Piper folded it again and tucked it away. Because she was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a dream that would end when the harvest did. The wind was sharper than he remembered. 3 days had passed, and Quinn Hartley stepped out of the black SUV with his tailored coat slung over one shoulder, the scent of late autumn in the air. The vineyard had shifted in subtle ways. The leaves were turning copper and the sky hung lower, heavier, as if winter was watching from a distance. He adjusted his grip on the leather duffel as he crossed the dirt path. The crew was nowhere in sight, the fields quiet. He could hear the soft creak of the barn door ahead and a faint hum of music, low, melodic, something bluesy. Inside, Piper stood on the ladder, halfway up a row of newly installed shelves. Her back was to him, arms stretched as she arranged bottles, hair pulled into a loose braid that fell between her shoulder blades. Need a hand? His voice echoed softly against the wooden beams. She turned, her face unreadable for a fraction of a second, then nodded toward the floor. Catch this. A bottle of red dropped without warning. Quinn caught it just before it hit the ground. Still got it, he said. You were late, she replied, descending the ladder, by 10 minutes. I noticed. She took the bottle from his hand and placed it beside the register. Then she looked at him and the tension in her shoulders eased. You really came back. He stepped closer. Did you think I wouldn't? I didn't know what to expect. You live in a world that doesn't wait. I wasn't sure if I was just a pause button or something more. Quinn set the duffel down and met her gaze. You're not a pause. You're the only thing that's made me stop and ask what I actually want. She crossed her arms, but her voice was softer now. And what do you want, you? Piper blinked, then exhaled slowly. You left behind a lot. I did, but none of it made me feel like this place does, like you do. She gave a small laugh, shaking her head. You really don't know how to do things halfway, do you? I've never wanted to. He reached into the coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, her breath caught. Before you assume anything, no, this isn't what you think, he said. Not yet. She raised an eyebrow as he opened the box, revealing a delicate gold necklace with a tiny pendant shaped like a grapevine leaf. I had it made in Chicago, from a sketch I did on the plane. It's not flashy, it's not expensive by my standards, but it reminds me of you. Of here? Piper reached out and touched it gently, then took it from the box. Help me put it on. He stepped behind her, brushing her braid aside as he fastened it around her neck. When she turned, her eyes held something deeper now, something unguarded. I read your proposal, she said. All of it, twice. And it's fair, generous. You didn't try to take control. I meant what I said. I just want to help, no strings. There are always strings, Piper said, but there wasn't accusation in her voice. But maybe that's not a bad thing anymore. Quinn reached for her hand. Let me be part of this, not just the business. She hesitated, then squeezed his hand. Then you're going to need boots. I bought some. The guy at the store tried to talk me out of them, said they weren't my kind of thing. Sounds like a smart man. Probably, he said with a grin. But I've made worse choices than buying boots. She rolled her eyes. We'll see how you feel after an hour of hauling compost. Later that afternoon, while Piper handled a supplier call in the office, Quinn found Liam fixing a fence post near the southern edge of the property. The air smelled faintly of pine and a hawk circled overhead. Quinn approached slowly, stopping a few feet away. You know you don't have to like me, he said, but I'm not going anywhere. Liam kept hammering, not looking up. That's not what worries me. What does? That she's finally starting to trust someone, and if you change your mind, it doesn't just break her heart, it unravels everything she's rebuilt. Quinn nodded. I get that. I'd feel the same if it were my sister. Liam finally looked at him. Then don't screw it up. I won't. Good, because if you do, I'll make you regret ever stepping off that jet. Quinn didn't flinch. Fair warning. Liam nodded once and went back to work. That night, Piper met Quinn near the edge of the vineyard where the moonlight lit the hills in silver. She wore a dark sweater and jeans, the grapevine necklace catching the light each time she moved. Come with me, she said. They walked in silence toward the back of the property, where the land sloped gently and the stars seemed to hang closer. A small wooden bench waited beneath a lone olive tree, old and gnarled. This was my dad's favorite spot, she said, sitting. He used to bring a thermos of coffee out here and talk to the vines. Quinn joined her. Do you do the same? Sometimes, when I'm scared or unsure. The vines don't talk back, but they don't judge either. He reached for her hand. What are you unsure about now? Whether this is real, not just you, me, us. Everything feels like it's teetering on the edge of something big, and I don't know if I'm ready. Quinn turned to her. It is big. But you are ready. You've built an entire world out here with your bare hands. You've survived heartbreak, loss, pressure I can't even imagine. You're more ready than anyone I've ever met. She leaned her head against his shoulder. I'm afraid of wanting too much. He kissed the top of her head. Then let me want it with you. They sat like that for a long time until the wind picked up and the stars grew brighter. A week later, the vineyard hosted a private event, a celebration of the harvest season's end. Local chefs catered, musicians played soft acoustic sets, and lanterns lined the gravel paths. Guests wandered the rows with wine glasses, marveling at the land Piper had fought to keep alive. Quinn stood near the tasting room, dressed in a crisp shirt with his sleeves rolled up, watching Piper greet a couple from San Francisco who just ordered 2 cases. You clean up well, she said, joining him with a glass of white. You say that like it's a surprise. It is. You've got dirt under your nails, he raised his glass. Call it a badge of honor. She laughed, then reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. What's that? My response to your offer, officially signed, with a few additions. He took it, opening it carefully. At the bottom, her signature was scrawled beside a handwritten note. Only if you agree to be on grape stomping duty every autumn, he smiled. Deal. And one more condition. Oh, Piper took a deep breath, then looked up at him. You said not yet. But I need to know if you meant someday. Quinn stepped forward. I meant it. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a tiny cork tied with a ribbon. Then consider this a promise, not a proposal, just a beginning. He took it, fingers brushing hers, a beautiful one. They didn't kiss. Not yet. Instead, they stood there, glasses raised, as the world around them shimmered with music and laughter and the quiet certainty of something real beginning. Later, when the last guest had gone and the lights were dimmed, Quinn walked her back to the house, their hands entwined. Inside, the fire was lit, casting warm shadows on the walls. Piper stepped out of her shoes, curled onto the couch, and looked at him with the kind of exhaustion only joy can cause. He sat beside her, pulling her close. You know what I realized tonight? He asked. What? I didn't just fall in love with you, I fell in love with everything you've created. The vines. The land, the fight, I want to be part of all of it. She tilted her head. Even the compost, he grinned. Especially the compost, she laughed, then cupped his face in her hands. You stole my heart, Quinn Hartley. He kissed her, slow and certain. And you'll never have to steal mine, he whispered. You already own it. Outside, the wind rustled the vines and the stars burned high above the valley. Inside, everything was exactly as it should be. The first frost crept silently into Napa a week later, glazing the vineyard in silver before dawn. The harvest was finished, the barrels sealed, the vines pruned back and left to sleep through winter. And for the first time in years, Piper didn't dread the slowing pace of the season. Because even as the land rested, something else had begun to bloom quietly, steadily, without demand or hesitation. Quinn had stayed. Not just in theory, not as a man passing through, but as someone who showed up every morning, boots muddy, hair wind-tossed, helping Liam repair irrigation lines, working with the accountant Piper had hired last spring, and even sitting in on a tasting with the distributor from Sonoma who'd never taken her seriously before. He didn't try to take over, he didn't throw money at every problem, he just showed up and stayed. They'd fallen into a rhythm, not perfect, not easy, but real. One morning, Piper found him in the cottage kitchen, sleeves rolled up, brow furrowed as he tried to flip pancakes without destroying them. That's your third one, she said, leaning against the doorway. He glanced over his shoulder. They're a disaster. They're edible. Barely. She walked over and took the spatula from him, gently easing the next one off the pan and onto the growing stack beside the stove. He stepped back, watching her. You're good at rescuing things, he said. Only when they're worth saving. He moved behind her, slid his arms around her waist, and rested his chin on her shoulder. You still think I'm worth it, most days. And the other days, I remind myself that you used to wear cufflinks to breakfast. He laughed, kissed her neck, and let the moment stretch. Later that afternoon, Piper stood outside the barn, clipboard in hand, reviewing the list of winter repairs when Liam approached, wiping his hands on a rag. You've been different, he said. She glanced up. Since when? Since him? She lowered the clipboard. Is that a bad thing? Liam shook his head. No, just new. You don't flinch every time the phone rings. You laugh more. You sleep. I still don't trust it, she admitted. It feels like it could vanish. Then don't let it. He handed her a folded sheet of paper. That guy from the ag board called this morning. They approved the grant. Her eyes widened. Seriously? Yup, you'll get it in January, enough to replace the irrigation system. She stared at the paper, stunned, then looked up at Liam. We actually made it. You did. He paused. And maybe it's okay to stop doing it alone. That night, Piper stood by the fireplace in the cottage as Quinn walked in carrying a stack of mail. He dropped it on the table and held up a thick white envelope. This one's from your old high school. She took it, frowning. Probably another fundraising letter. Quinn leaned against the arm of the couch, watching her tear it open. Her expression shifted slowly, eyes scanning the contents. What is it? He asked. She looked up. They want me to come speak about the vineyard. About building something from the ground up. He raised a brow. I guess word got around. You're going to do it right? I don't know. I hated that place. I was always the girl with dirt under her nails. Then show them what that girl became. She folded the letter. Maybe. Quinn crossed the room, wrapped his arms around her and kissed her forehead. You've always been more than they ever saw. After dinner, they sat by the fire, wrapped in a blanket, sipping red wine. The flames crackled and danced, casting soft shadows across the room. I have something to ask you, Quinn said, setting down his glass. Piper turned to him, heart thudding just a little faster. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope, not velvet, not dramatic, just plain cream paper. This isn't what you think, he said. But it's important. She opened it slowly. Inside was a deed. Her eyes widened. You bought the land next to ours, he nodded. It borders your south field, the old orchard. It's been sitting unused for years. I thought maybe it could be part of the future, yours. Ours? Piper stared at him, overwhelmed. You didn't have to do this. I know, but I wanted to. Not because it's an investment, not because it's a good deal, because it felt right. She set the paper down and leaned into him, her voice quiet. "What if I'm still scared? Then we'll be scared together." 1 week later, Piper stood before a crowd of students in her old high school auditorium. She wore boots, jeans, and a simple blouse, no blazer, no notes, just herself. "I used to sit where you're sitting," she said. "I used to think I had to leave this town to become someone worth listening to, but I stayed, and I built something, not because it was easy, but because it mattered." Quinn watched from the back, arms crossed, heart full. Afterward, she found him waiting by the doors. "You were incredible," he said. "I was terrified. No one could tell. I want to do more of that," she said. "Share the story, help other women who are trying to build things without losing themselves. Then we will." They drove back to the vineyard in comfortable silence. That evening, beneath a sky streaked in lavender and gold, Quinn led Piper to the southern edge of the property. The land he'd bought was now cleared and leveled, the soil tested and ready. "I have one more thing to show you," he said. She followed him to a small structure being framed by a local crew, bare bones, but the beginnings of something. "What is this?" "It's your new tasting room. You've outgrown the old one. This will overlook the west vines, big windows, space for events, a kitchen. And your office." She turned slowly, taking it all in. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll let me keep building with you." Piper stepped into his arms and looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "You already are." The wedding came quietly the following spring. They kept it small. Just family, friends, and the crew who'd worked beside them through storms and sun. Piper wore a dress the color of champagne and wildflowers in her hair. Quinn stood tall in a dark gray suit, his tie undone by the end of the night, his eyes never leaving hers. They said their vows beneath the olive tree where they had first spoken of what terrified them. "I don't want a perfect life," she said. "I want a real one, and I want it with you." "I spent years building things that didn't matter," he said. "Then I found you." And suddenly, everything did. When they kissed, the vineyard around them erupted in cheers and the clatter of raised glasses. That summer, the new tasting room opened to record bookings. The vineyard's name spread across the region, a place where tradition met innovation, where wine was made with care and soul. Piper ran the estate with the same fire she always had. But now with support, with laughter, with a partner who stood beside her, not above her. Quinn still took meetings and flew east when needed, but he always came home. He was as much a part of the vineyard now as the vines themselves. And in late autumn, as the leaves turned gold again, Piper stood on the porch of the cottage, a hand on her growing belly, watching Quinn teach a group of local kids how to press grapes. She smiled, heart full, life blooming in every direction, because she hadn't just saved the vineyard. She'd found something that couldn't be bought or bargained for: love. Real, imperfect, powerful love, and it had grown like the vines from the soil of something true.